Hello and welcome to the 8th installment of Spartan Step Up, CWRU Community Response to COVID-19. This web series is coordinated by the Alumni Association of Case Western Reserve University. I'm Rick Bischoff, Vice President for Enrollment Management at Case Western Reserve, and our broadcast today will focus on how COVID-19 is affecting recruiting and admitting students. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Chrystal Russell. Chrystal, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Chrystal is our Director of Admission, and also joined by Bob McCullough, Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management and Dean of Admissions. Bob?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here and great to connect with our alumni.
Thanks. These are unusual times, what we're experiencing. And I've got some questions that I've prepared to throw to Bob and to Chrystal, and then we'll be answering questions that have been submitted by our viewers today. So, Chrystal, maybe you can start by telling people what's usually happening. This pandemic really impacted our campus beginning in the middle of March. And what's usually going on in the admissions office in the middle of March and into April? Is it an important time of the year?
It's an incredibly important time. There are lots of things happening in March and April. In March, we release regular decisions. We are sending people across the country and around the world to do yield events for admitted students, to connect with juniors and sophomores, primarily juniors. We are hosting a ton of students on campus through a variety of programs, whether that is visit days on a normal day or open houses or admitted student days. Things are very busy as we gear up for May 1st and hoping people choose us.
Bob, can you give us a sense of, what kind of traffic do we see on campus during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. It is typically, and this is one of the things that, especially for those who may not have been around campus in a while, being around University Circle in the latter part of March and into April, it feels like carnival. I mean, it's there are people everywhere. So typically, and to Chrystal's point, what's happening at that time is that we're so kind of wrapped up in encouraging students to pick Case Western Reserve, but also really getting started with that next group of students as they're beginning their discovery process. So you kind of have these overlapping groups of families who are coming on campus to either seal the deal or just to kind of get started there. So typically I think in the spring of let's say 2019, we had close to 4,000 families who visited us between kind of the early March and that May 1st candidates reply date. Just take, one of the biggest weekends of the year we kind of think about as our sort of Super Bowl Sunday, runs from sort of the Good Friday through Easter weekend, Passover, and since so many schools have time off then, either in observance of the holidays or for spring breaks, we are just full of students. We would have close to 3,000 individual people on campus between that Friday and that Monday, either doing some of our events or just coming for a campus tour. So it's I kind of think about during that time of year, the institutions around us, the hotels, the restaurants, they love us because we're bringing a lot of visitors in from all over.
Yeah, no, that is certainly one of my favorite times of year to be on campus, with just the volume of people coming to check out Case Western Reserve. So, Chrystal, take it back to March 16th. Does that date stand out in your mind for any reason whatsoever?
It does. I think it was the day after Governor DeWine just said shut the whole state down. We had just released decisions, and I had gone through my very first admission cycle of reading, and we kind of hold our breath as we send those out. And we were holding our breath for decisions. We had thinking about our staff and what was going to happen with their health, thinking a little bit about canceling all of the travel that we had scheduled, thinking about what the spring meant with no visitors. So those were some of the things that I was thinking about on March 16th.
And now I want to correct you. We didn't cancel all of our spring events. We rescheduled some of them,
That's
particularly
true.
the admitted student reception that we normally do. Canceling is for quitters, Chrystal.
We are not quitters.
So that was a quick pivot. Bob, March and April, after we make those admissions decisions, that's always a time fraught with anxiety. Did we admit too many? Did we admit too few? Everybody's going to come. Nobody's going to come. What were the other things that you were worrying about, and how did COVID-19 impact your level of anxiety?
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, there were so many things. We've been doing this for all three of us have been at the admissions kind of game for many years, and we're accustomed to what it looks like. It might look a little bit different one year to the next. There might be different kind of stressors one year to the next, but the basic rhythm of enrolling the class is predictable. We know that we're going to have big admitted student events. We know that we're going to have a lot of conversations with families as they're making tough decisions, and we kind of have a sense of predictability. And I think it was really interesting to go through a year when we felt as though as much as we are comfortable with pinning our lives and livelihoods and the future of the university on the decision-making patterns of 17 and 18-year-old brains, this might have been just a little bit too much in terms of uncertainty and volatility. We were, I think about that first big thing that we had to do right after we released decisions. We were interviewing students for the combined undergraduate and med school admission that next Monday and Tuesday. And to go from a time when all of those students needed to be on campus, they needed to be in our spaces, they needed to be meeting with us face to face, to we're going to do this virtually. And credit to our team and to the team at the medical school and to our students that they were able to make that happen so quickly. But we didn't really know what that was going to look like. And we also were worried because, we know if you have been on campus recently, what a showpiece it is to walk around and to be able to have students who are interested in medicine, for example, walk into the health education campus. And then beyond that, the students who might be interested in engineering or business to be able to walk around campus and to walk into ThinkBox, and overwhelmingly knowing that the energy that students are able to feel talking to our current students, talking to our faculty. How are we going to do that? So those were some of the worries. I think we were worried about things more kind of at a macro level too. Would students be able to get to campus? Would they be able to get there in August? What kind of new worries and new concerns might arise as this was unfolding from not only a health standpoint, but also an economic standpoint, and what might happen in terms of families' finances and being able to make the decisions about a rather significant investment in college. And then the one other thing I'll mention, and they're among many worries, I think we all know that for admission people, April is the cruelest month, as T.S. Eliot would say, as we're just trying to figure out what's going to happen. There was a lot of conversation at that time about would students defer admission? Would everybody just opt out of college the next year? Fortunately, that didn't happen, but at the time, there was so much unknown.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of unknown, Bob. Chrystal, you mentioned staff, and you work very close. Well, you both work very closely with staff, certainly. But Chrystal, you're certainly on the front lines in working with staff and helping them kind of figure out what needs to be done. Can you talk a little bit about balancing really April, May, and throughout the summer, working with those fall of 20 students who were coming, while simultaneously having to think about 2021. How have staff managed that? What kind of strategies have we used?
So when March 16th came and went, and we realized that we were not going to be able to have any visitors, our biggest worry was, or concern was, how we are connect with accepted students, how are we going to connect with the class of 2021 and 2022 and so forth. And so when we switched to virtual, we went all in. And there were over 200 virtual sessions that we targeted. Some were open to everyone. Some were targeted to just admitted students. Some were targeted towards juniors specifically, about preparing for college, what they need to know about how we're going to react to the spring, their summer, their accepted their activities being canceled, their summer plans or what have you. How are we going to view their application in that light? And so we did a lot of programming in vein. We really put the call out to students and to alums and to faculty and staff and to help us. And we did over 200 virtual sessions, like I said, but there were 66 or 68 different ones. And there were over 200 faculty, staff, students, and alums who really helped the admission office out so we could enroll the class, so we could go into fall feeling good about students and thinking about how we carry on that interaction with students throughout the summer. So we had lots of academic sessions over the summer. We have had a lot of students engage with us in the interview process. In fact, that we've had almost double the number of students that we would typically interact with take advantage of this virtual space.
Yeah, that I will say is one area where I was really, really proud of the team and how quickly, we went remote on March 16th. And, so staff were working from home. Staff were ready to start working from home because we knew that was, a possibility. And I think it was on Wednesday, so we're working remotely beginning on Monday, and on Wednesday, we were up with live sessions. And, it really was, not just a team effort within enrollment management to kind of coordinate, schedule, do all of these sessions, but just the way the entire community stepped up. Chrystal, can you elaborate a little? One of the series that we did that I thought was particularly good was reached out to kind of some younger alums and did some pieces around career or graduate professional school. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We did. There were, I remember two specifically. One was based in entrepreneurship. So we had some young alums talk about their experience at Case Western Reserve, how they took advantage of, in one person's case, the Think Box, and how the university sent him to South by Southwest and sent him to the Consumer Electronics Show, and how he had graduated starting his own business. And so we had a few alums highlighted, and they really connected with students, and were really good about talking about how Case Western Reserve had launched them into where they are now. We did a similar program for students who are interested in pre-med. So on that particular panel, there was an alum who had gone to Case Western Reserve's medical school, and then there were 3 alums who were in different places in the process of applying. So I think we had a first year, we had a senior, and we had a first year medical student, but had started in undergraduate here. So those were very successful.
Yeah, those were really, really cool. So Bob, as we think about, fall of 2021, we're, deep in recruitment for that class. What are the, what's different? What are the concerns as we look towards 2021?
Yeah, no, I don't know if anyone listening today has people in their house who are in school and maybe in high school or in other stages of school. Something that we have spent a lot of time thinking about is just how much that world has been disrupted for students and what that might mean. So when you think about kind of the typical things that we might focus on when we read applications, one, of course, is what does school look like? What kind of classes did a student take? How did a student perform in their classes? What might that tell us about what they've learned and what they're ready for coming into an environment like Case Western Reserve? Well, we know that the school looked a lot different at the tail end of last year, and transcripts were going to look a lot different as different districts were wrestling with how they were going to evaluate students. Would they go kind of credit, no credit? Would they have grades? What would those grades mean? Would they mean something different from what they might have meant in the past? So that's a little bit different. We might look at something like engagement beyond the classroom and think about students who have been involved in varsity athletics or the arts, or might have been in their school's orchestra or spring musical or student government or all these other kinds of things where they were making a meaningful impact, connecting with their peers, making an impact on their community. Well, a lot of that kind of went away, and many students were not able to participate in those same kinds of things, not only in the spring, but kind of carrying on into the fall. So how do we sort of make sense of that? And then a big sphere that you might have heard a lot about is just the severe kind of disruption in standardized testing. So SAT and ACT tests, dates that were canceled, the dates that were able to be offered, the number of seats that were available to students were severely limited. Many times students who would sign up for a test date and once they got to the actual date of the test would discover that there actually wasn't room for them at that testing site. So we're kind of going into this, and I credit you, Rick, for really kind of seeing the writing on the wall very early, that it was highly likely that this was the 2021s were going to go into their year with a greatly limited ability to take an SAT or an ACT. And so that's what really sort of spurred some conversations that we'd had before about test optional, but really accelerated them, and then kind of bringing that into the faculty and into the community at the university to talk about, this is really the right thing to do, to go test optional for 2021. So three pretty big changes in what we're expecting to see in the admissions process. And that leaves aside just all the other kind of impacts that COVID and the pandemic has had on families, families that might have suffered, a loss of job, family members who might have gotten sick, all kinds of things that could have impacted us or impacted our students and what we might see when it comes time to read their applications.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have a spouse who is a college counselor. And so, I was probably a little bit closer to the anxiety that was going on in houses across the country, well, really around the world, over all of the testing disruption. And that was another kind of, very proud moment, I think, for the university, where, it was literally 54 hours from the time I went to the president and the provost and said, we need to do this, until, the faculty senate had approved our becoming test optional for fall of 2021. We've now extended that through the fall of 2023. No, fall of 2024. I have to count on my fingers. It's 4 years. And, it really was, the conversation was really, this is not what students need to be worried about right now. Let them focus on school and not be worried about the test. We'll come back to testing in just a couple of minutes. So, Chrystal, can Bob outlined some of the challenges. Can you talk a little bit about, some of the strategies that we're using to address some of the challenges?
Yeah, some of the challenges, are just the day-to-day access that students have and the disparities that students have within college counseling and what that landscape is looking like. We're seeing that right now where some schools are really savvy and they have a robust high school visit virtual plan, and some schools don't have the capacity to do that. And so how are we reaching those students has really been a question of ours. And so we have charged the staff with going out and finding the folks that we can visit and that we must visit. And then, we are pivoting to regional sessions and hopefully scooping up kids that we're not necessarily going to be able to see in high school visits. We are targeting different cities in that vein. There's lots of things that we're still thinking about on a day-to-day, but it's all about how can students connect with us and trying to meet them where they are and keeping the word out there and keeping us on the minds of both students, counselors, and families and interacting with them as much as possible.
Great. And Bob, can you elaborate a little bit on being test optional and kind of what the implications are for that as we're thinking about that?
Yeah, definitely. So this is something that I mentioned a minute ago that we'd been having conversations about, for a couple of years, recognizing that as you think about kind of the variety of different backgrounds and educational experiences that students have, standardized tests have utility that isn't standard across all applications, right? So when we think about, as we were kind of thinking and seeing what some other schools were doing and kind of how the field was shifting and changing over time, there had been test optional was something that started over 30 years ago at some liberal arts colleges and had been kind of moving along, and a few other schools had adopted test optional policies. And then a couple of years ago, the University of Chicago really made a big splash as being the most prestigious national university to adopt a test optional policy. And I think that accelerated a lot of the conversations at a number of colleges and universities thinking about, is this something that we should think a little bit more about? Practically for us, as we kind of went into this, we do holistic admission. What that means is that we're not reliant on one piece of the application puzzle more than another piece. It's really about trying to understand a student's achievements and potential within the context of where they're coming from. So we have always thought about test scores alongside curriculum and grades and various other kinds of pieces of the application. When we made the decision to go test optional, we made the decision to go all in test optional. And so what that means is that students are not at a disadvantage if they are applying without test scores. They will receive full consideration and equal consideration to those who submit test scores for admission, for merit scholarships, for programs. Our most competitive program is that combined undergraduate and medical school admission that I was talking about doing virtual interviews for. All of those programs, students will be able to be fully considered if they're not submitting test scores. And a big reason for that is that for many students, it's the term of art is test optional. It's not really an option for a lot of students. There are a lot of students who wish they could take a test, but they're just not able to because of these capacity considerations. So we want to make sure that they're not at a disadvantage, that they're able to receive every consideration. And so as we've kind of been retooling, re-engineering our reading process, we've had to make some adjustments and some tweaks going into preparing for reviewing applications. But it's built on a foundation of this holistic admission. So it's not coming out of left field. It's really just kind of pushing a little bit further into doing good admission work, really understanding what a student is presenting in their application and what that might mean for their potential at Case Western Reserve.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were very concerned about, and one of the reasons that we moved so quickly back in April, is we knew that the testing access was going to be most difficult for those students who are already the most disadvantaged in this process. And that has certainly borne out to be true. I'm going to turn now to some questions that have been submitted by viewers. And I'm going to start with Andrea Gold, who's a friend of the university, is asking about spring semester. February is a long way away, but wondering what's the current plan for the second semester for the university and which students will be on campus. Who wants to jump on that one? Do you want to take it, Bob?
Sure. Well, I think, and this is one of those areas that is kind of evolving as we go here. And I think the good folks on campus are really working to try to make sure that we can be as available to students as possible, and recognizing that the nature of what we're dealing with is something where the winds could shift, the winds could change, and plans that we make today could shift and not be valid in a couple of months. But more or less, what the kind of direction of where things are going would look a lot like it does this fall in terms of who might be on campus. And I can tell you just that we would love to have have our full strength of students on campus. It doesn't feel quite the same not having everybody there. But of course, I think everybody involved in the decision making is doing their best to move forward in a way that's safe, that's responsive to guidelines from CDC, and make sure that our students who are on campus are able to be protected, to be safe, and to learn in a positive environment.
Yeah, I will tell you, one of the things that has been, I think, most difficult through this situation is it feels like just-in-time decision-making, because the regular work still needs to go on, and now you have this whole other layer of trying to figure out problems that are really hard. We have announced that we're going to do a kind of a January term as part of the spring semester. So students will be able to take up to 4 credits. For most students, that's going to mean they're going to take one course over 3 weeks in January, and then and that will be remote, and then we'll resume similar model to what we've been doing this fall on February 1st for the spring semester. And part of the reasoning behind that is we're not going to have spring break, and because we don't want students going and traveling and then coming back to campus, and it gives students an opportunity to kind of spread out that academic load a little bit, given that they're going to be taking those courses beginning February 1st, really without a significant break from them then until the end of the semester. And we haven't fully announced which students are going to be able to return to campus in the spring. I expect that's an announcement that'll be happening relatively soon. And then David Johnson, who's an Alumni Association Emeritus board member, asks, will funds from the Snyder Scholarship be focused on increasing the number of African-American students? And I'm going to take that one. In part, I'm going to say, I would want Carol Moss to weigh in with the exact specifics there. What I will tell you is kind of across the university, there is a focus on working to increase the number of African-American students. There has been kind of as long as I've been at the university, but really a direct focus, and certainly dollars are part of that. And David, I'm sure, knows that diversity is something that was very, very important to Barbara Snyder. I remember 11 years ago, that was at the top of her list of when I asked her what was important, and her list did not change in her time here. But Carol would have the specifics on the scholarships and exactly how they're structuring that. And then I've got a question from Sophie Saru, who's a staff member actually in the development office. And she's asking about enrollment, and enrollment has enrollment gone down because of the pandemic. And we haven't talked, Bob, about kind of where we ended up with this entering class.
Yeah, so things actually, as a result of some of the so we'll talk about the entering class, but then overall, our entering class is just a little bit smaller than it was a year ago. And, you know, that really is kind of a result of a couple of things. One being, just as I was kind of talking a minute ago, about really being responsive to what you know in the moment. As we went through the summer, there was just sort of a lack of clarity about exactly what might be kind of possible. And we had some students who decided to defer admission to the spring. And most of the students who made that choice were our international students who really just weren't able to get to the United States to study and wanted to be able to buy a little bit more time to be able to then kind of come in the winter and start then. So, and then we have a handful of students also who deferred to next fall, but not many more than typically would defer in a given year. So we're overall in terms of undergraduate enrollment, things are very healthy, and as I said, the first year class just a touch smaller than it was a year ago.
Yeah, it was, you can imagine these were conversations all summer long trying to predict what are students going to do. Are they all going to stay home? Certainly, as you read in the press, the press was certainly saying, nobody's going to college this fall. And we were really surprised when our overall fall undergraduate enrollment was larger than our overall fall undergraduate enrollment last fall. And last fall was record undergraduate enrollment. So we have, more undergraduates on campus right now, in the modern era of the university, which is very exciting. Chrystal, here's a question from Jason, and I know Jason, and I'm gonna mispronounce his name, Betrego, who's also a staff member at the university. How do enrollment professionals overcome digital fatigue that the prospective students are feeling? When I saw this question, I thought he was going to ask about staff or feeling. But can you talk about what are some of the things we're doing to try to reach students who we know they're tired and they're tired of spending time on Zoom?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're doing is we're trying to be really flexible and really accommodating with our sessions, because right now this is what we have, and so being creative with the times that we offer our group information session during the week, times that we're offering interviews, sessions that we're having on the weekends. We're offering ones in the morning and one in the afternoon. We offer a program on Sundays. And so we're just trying to be really flexible and really accommodating. I know the staff, they're doing things at 3:00 in the morning, trying to connect with our students in India. And so sometimes you're interacting with students first thing in the morning or middle of the night. And we're just trying to be as available as possible and engaging as possible. I know that I've been conducting interviews throughout the fall, and the conversations that I've had have been really nice, because I was mentioning to you all earlier, the students that I am talking with now have been engaging with us over the spring and over the fall, so that we can really have in-depth conversations. And I think that gives us both energy, or gives our staff energy, gives the students energy, where they're having a productive conversation.
Yeah, I've been shocked at kind of the experience of connecting with students one-on-one, and just kind of how authentic that experience feels, even though you might be hundreds or thousands of miles away. And alumna Linda Zeltner is asking, I mentioned about the acceptance of first-generation low-income students and what efforts are being made to help them succeed both academically and socially. Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of recruitment and our attention kind of in the process of first-gen and low-income students?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is an important question, and Chrystal mentioned, or might have been you, Rick, who mentioned, one of the challenges that we are recognizing with some of the changes and the restrictions, both from an access to counseling. Actually, I think you both touched on it, an access to counseling perspective, and also kind of an access to opportunity perspective, is that it's hitting harder those populations that are already at a disadvantage. This is an important role for us to play, and something that before COVID, before any of this started, has been on our minds as we think about what can Case Western Reserve do to be able to reach out, to be able to be accessible to students, and especially those who are at a disadvantage in terms of their access to resources. So one of the things, and this is, there are many elements to this. One is that we're proactive in reaching out to students who we think have reason to believe might come from neighborhoods that have a kind of lower socioeconomic status. And we want to be able to reach out to those students to recruit them aggressively and make sure that they understand what kind of a place Case Western Reserve is and what opportunities are available, not only in terms of the academic landscape, but also with financial aid. And that's the other really important factor, is that we've been meeting the full need for all admitted students. And that's something that to make sure that students know that even though they might see a listed price of the university in excess of $70,000, that we're going to be an institution that is able to provide them with financial aid to make it possible for them to come to the university. And then a kind of hand in hand with that is being proactive with those students to let them know that we've waived their application fee. So they're able to make sure that if this is a place that they're interested in, that they can participate, they can submit their application without having to have that application fee dollar in hand. We've been spending a lot of time, and this is kind of really thinking through over the last several years about what are different barriers in the process that might impact students and their ability to submit an application or to complete an application. One example would be prior to being test optional, and this continues on today, moving to allow students to self-report their SAT or their ACT. And so even though low-income students may qualify for a waiver to send their test scores, they may not always know, or some students may not qualify for the waiver, but it's still, it adds up for a middle-income family to be able to continue to add these costs and these fees. Another example would be that when we admit a student, a low-income student, we'll waive their enrollment deposit and let them know that their enrollment deposit has been waived. So, Rick, you might want to tell a story about that, but really just to let those students know that we know that it's hard for them to come up with $500 to decide that they want to come to Case Western Reserve. And this is information that we have. And so we want to make sure that we're communicating to those students to say, if you're ready and we're the place for you, we're not going to make you have to go and scrounge up that money to say yes.
Yeah, Bob's hinting making low-income students ask for their enrollment deposit to be waived is one of my pet peeves. I've never understood it. We know that these are low-income students, and myself, I was a low-income first-generation college student, and just why when we know this is going to be hard, don't we just do that automatically? And I've managed to convince some of my colleagues at other universities to put the same kind of program in place there. Some other questions. Robin Borgstead, 1986 graduate of Case Western Reserve. I'm sorry, of Western Reserve College, is asking about plans for using alumni in local outdoor or small group outreach in the process. What are we thinking about alums and how we can utilize them?
Yeah, I'll start off on that, and great to hear from you, Robin. Robin's one of our kind of superstars in volunteering with the admissions program. So, we one of the things that we shifted to a year ago is really thinking about the ways in which we work with alumni volunteers in admissions, and recognizing that as our applicant pool has grown, we're just not able to do the same kinds of things that we used to be able to do. We don't have enough capacity to interview all of the students that we'd like to interview. So one of the things that we shifted to a year ago was really to kind of focus, instead of having our alumni volunteers working at the sort of front end before students are offered admission with doing interviews, to kind of do a couple things. One, to encourage our alumni to help us on things like college fairs. And to your question, maybe, Robin, that's something that the college fairs haven't been able to happen in the same way that they normally would, just because of obvious reasons. So the other thing, though, and this is really important, is to kind of get our alumni connected with students who have been offered admission, to be able to be available to those students as resources to say, I'm in your community, I'm somebody who's gone to Case Western Reserve, and to be able to share their experiences of what it's like, and to really ground the university in the students' sort of local sphere. So we've worked, Tom Fanning in our office has worked with alumni volunteers to match them up with admitted students and get them to reach out to students and connect with them. We want to be able to kind of amp that up even more in the coming year. Some of the things that we found success with, we made mention of some of these web sessions that we've done, and there's a lot more potential there to really, kind of grow different aspects of the experience and get more alumni engaged. We did these regional sessions where we had alumni who were a part of the regional session talking about their experiences. So, we've looked at the virtual world of recruiting, and in many ways, there are things that we've wanted to do for a long time and just couldn't find the room to do. And this experience has really kind of blown the doors out of that and given us a chance to really explore some high potential opportunities. And we expect that even when we're able to do a college fair again, or we're able to visit a high school, or we're able to have people back on campus, that many of these kinds of things we'll want to continue to do. And I think alumni can play a really important role in that.
Great. Bob, Chrystal, I'm getting word that it is time to wrap up. I want to thank both of you for joining us today for this episode of Spartans Step Up. For our audience, if you'd like more information on the recruiting and admission process, please contact the Alumni Association. That information will be posted on your screen momentarily. Your comments will be forwarded on. Thank you for joining us today, and be well.